And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello and welcome to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. I'm Mike Newell, and after all the talk, all the speculation, all the sort of hyperbole we've had in the preseason, we actually have a football match to talk about. Preseason is done and dusted. The 2025 season has finally started, and maybe it's not as bad as you all thought it might be. We'll talk about that over the next little bit here. We'll break down TFC's road draw against DC United. Of course, you can see him on our screens. Friend of the show, John Molinaro from TFC Republic, is joining us as well to give us his thoughts. He was on the road in DC. I was also in DC. You guys probably saw a lot of the stuff that I was doing there. Mr. Singh, you were here. Warm in your house. John, you were warm in a press box. I was freezing at the top of section 112 with the bitter DC wind blowing, but it was good to have live football back in our lives. Also bringing in, of course, my co-host, Michael Singh. Mike, how you doing?
I'm good. I can't wait to hear about both. Mike, your experience first of all. We caught quite a bit of it on social. But then also, JMO, your experience, traveling back to a TFC away game. I'm sure it's been quite some time, especially like a regular season game, even though it's season opener like this. So I'm excited to hear kind of your thoughts, how it is 2.0, really post-COVID times to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think, and JMO, you can let us know, but, in terms of, and I'm curious about this before we get into the game, before we get into, the particulars of it, traveling away as a reporter and reporting on the team on the road, what is that like? So maybe give our fans like an insight on what sort of that is like for a beat reporter to sort of travel away and cover the team.
It's kind of hectic in a lot of ways, just sort of, because you have to sort of book the travel like yourself, and you have to sort of, figure out the logistics. And I'm sort of someone who, I'm a nervous traveler, to be perfectly honest. Like I don't really sort of, not that I'm scared of planes or anything like that, but I don't really sort of calm down or settle down until I'm really kind of sort of checked into the hotel where I'm staying. But it begins all with sort of booking the travel. But yeah, it's a fun experience, but it's a tough experience too, because you sort of have to, you're away from you're out of your comfort zone. You're out of like the office or your home or whatever, and you're sort of have to fend for yourself to a large extent when you visit these cities, oftentimes for the first time, like it was my first time in Washington. And you sort of rely on people if you can. So I've over the past whatever it is, 15, almost 20 years, I've gotten to know Stephen Goff of the Washington Post really well. Such a solid guy. We've had many discussions over the years, and he was whenever he comes up to Toronto, I always spend some time with him, and he was really gracious to me when I was down there this weekend, helping me out with stuff, just kind of giving me the lay of the land of the city and of Audi Field. But it's it's a rush, like covering the team on the road. It's obviously it's hard work because, as I said, you're out of your comfort zone, so you have to rely on your wits a little bit more. But it's great fun to do, and it's really something that I'm really looking forward to do more of this season. It's been a while. I mean, I think I covered the Montreal game in the summer last year, but to actually kind of go out and get on a plane and travel was something I hadn't done in a while. So it was fun to do, and yeah, I'm going to be doing a fair amount of it this year as well for TFC Republic. So really looking forward to it this year.
I'd love to hear that. Sorry for jumping in and out, but if you said this, I apologize. But I'm curious, JMO, if you give some insight into sort of what the advantages are of traveling to an away game and being able to access it like that?
Well, I think it gives you sort of like a better perspective of the game, like
Hmm.
when you're there, right? I mean, Michael, you and I have spent time together in the press box at BMO Field, and I think we could both agree it's the vantage point of being that high up and seeing the entire field of play at one time is completely different than watching the game, through the comfort of your home on screen, right? You
Totally.
pick up things that you wouldn't necessarily see, from watching your television. I think it's important to if you can to sort of make these trips as a reporter to put in some face time. Not so much it's not about so much sort of, how should I say this? I think it's more about sort of making that connection with the club and showing them, hey, look, I'm serious about covering this team. Um, and I think it says a lot that, when media outlets send reporters on the road, whatever it is, whether it's the Raptors, the Leafs, Jays, or whatever, it's a signature, it's a sign of intent that, that media company is taking this sort of job of covering the team seriously. And, that's something that I want to get out there about TFC Republic since I launched the site, that I'm serious about covering the team in a very thoughtful and meaningful way. And I think this was, further. So I think TFC already understands that, having covered the team since day one, but I think they just appreciated having someone there on site, because it's not very often, especially over the last couple of years, that reporters, travel to cover road games. But I think mostly it's just about the vantage point that you get. I think as I said, you can see get a better perspective of the game as it evolves in real time, and you see things that you wouldn't normally pick up, by watching it on television.
Totally.
Absolutely. That's
And you
awesome.
probably get some insights as well that, some people who don't travel to the game are able to get, whether that be, maybe additional interview opportunities down the line or whatever it may be. So I think I applaud you and commend you because I believe you're the only one that would be traveling to as many games at least as you are this season. I know there hasn't been a lot of traveling, um, beat reporters in the city, let alone for Toronto FC. So to have someone back on the ground up for MMO matches is a really commendable dedication to providing great content and great access for fans who we never used to get. And I would say and encourage everyone else to continue to support TAC Republic, continue to support yourself
Thank
as
you.
you are making a commitment to for fans. So we should make that commitment back to you. So keep up the
Well,
great work, Nemo. I look forward to following your journeys, your stories, and some insights that you can get that no one else is going to be able to get.
I appreciate it. That's very kind of you to say. But yeah, I mean, that was a large part of sort of the sort of decision process. So to go out on the road this year was I wanted to provide more TFC Republic readers more bang for their buck with the subscription, just as to give you something added bonus that not any other site is doing. And so, like, I'm not going to be doing every road game, but I think I've kind of looked at the schedule and I see myself covering. It's probably going to be about 12 or 14 games this year,
On the road.
on the road. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Okay. That was
I'm
more
going
than
to
I thought
do,
too.
the goal is to do probably one or two like a month. So I'm not going to be in Orlando, but I'm going to be in Cincinnati in 2 weeks' time. And then after that, I'm looking at Miami in April. There's going to be Montreal in May. And then
Mhm.
the rest, it's really a heavy schedule from July onward. So tentatively planning to go to Nashville, Charlotte, Chicago, Philadelphia, uh,
Nice.
Columbus, and then knock on wood if there's any playoff games that are going to be on the road.
Well, like one game at a time,
Yeah.
but we
Let's not
just
get ahead of ourselves. I'll get ahead of
nobody's
ourselves. Yeah,
planning the
gonna
parade
be
from
like
Maple Leaf Square yet.
it's going to be like a full slate of like I said, not every road game, but
But pretty much every road game. It's
it's going to be comfortably. I could say probably in the 12 to 13, 14 range. So.
nice. Make sure you catch some baseball games while you're out there, eh, JMO?
Well, it's funny you say that, Michael, because like my hotel in Washington, smack dab right across the street from Nationals Park.
Nationals Park, yeah.
I love that park, by the way. If you went inside, they got a Shake Shack in there. It's brand new. I've been a couple times actually to that specific ballpark.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay, cool.
It is a nice ballpark, just so you know, JMO, for next time. Just
Okay.
so
Well,
you
yeah.
know.
Molinaro on the bus with all the supporters heading down to cover the games. That's going to be a thing of beauty. All right. Well, we're talking about your vantage point at the match, JMO. So if you want to stick around with us, let's chat a little bit about this 2-2 draw against DC United. Love to get into the details, but would love to get both of your first impressions on just what you saw from the team in its first outing in the regular season. Obviously, look, these guys aren't 100% there yet. You definitely could see that on both sides of the ball. But just generally, your first impressions in TFC. John, I want to touch on your 3 takeaways article in a moment.
Sure.
But Mikey, just want to get your thoughts on sort of the debut of 2025 TFC.
Yeah, cool. Listen, for me, not enough change, to be completely honest with you. I see a lot of positive reaction. I get it. Scored 2 goals. I think we created a lot of chances intentionally, but sorry, I should refrain from saying the word chances, maybe half chances or quarter chances. That was the part that stuck out to me, was the fact that I don't think that we created, or when I say we, Toronto FC created enough goal scoring opportunities, clear cut goal scoring opportunities. And when they did create their chances, it was Bernardeschi kind of taking people on 1v1. It was, again, a lot of isolated movements when the chances were actually created. I saw a lot of positive build-up play, and I think that's what I think a lot of people are taking away. But I think overall, listen, the 11 was the exact same minus, a homegrown player, Marcus Simmermancic, and Theo Corbeanu. Aside from that, you're looking at the exact same 11, essentially, that TFC put out last season, minus, of course, Lorenzo Insigne. So for me, I personally felt not enough change. I think when you look back at this game at the end of the season, and you look back at DC United, where they're going to be, I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in MLS. So if your standard is to go out and secure a 2-2 draw based off of, let's call a spade, 2 very, 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 very fortunate goals, in my opinion. Yeah, for me, that's still not good enough. And that's kind of where I stand. It's harsh. I know. Come at me. It could be a little bit harsh. I just don't think it was quite to the standard I expect Toronto FC to be.
Okay, fair enough. JMO, I feel like your 3 takeaways are a little bit more positive in the sense
Please,
that
bring it.
I think that you saw a little bit of fight in this team, even though, you also mentioned a lot of the same old mistakes kind of plagued this team. What were your sort of overall impressions on Robin Fraser's debut / return? I don't know how we want to label it as TFC manager.
Well, first of all, a big sort of gamble isn't the right word, but to give Marcus Simmermancic a start in that sort of situation, because you have to remember he's been limited to just sort of TFC2, right? This was his senior team debut. Yes, it's against DC, who is I think Michael is quite right in saying probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league this season. But still, to give a young kid like that a start in the season opener on the road in a place where Toronto hasn't won since 2016, when DC was still playing at RFK Stadium, that's a pretty big challenge that Robin Fraser did in terms of giving Simmermancic the start. And I thought Simmermancic really handled himself well playing in that sort of wingback role. Probably could have done a lot better on Benteke's goal. I think he probably could have closed down. Forget who made the cross in. I believe Herrera. I can't remember.
No. I'll get the name. Just give me a second. Yeah.
So I thought he could have done better on that. But overall, pretty solid performance for someone so young and with so little experience under his belt. So that kind of stood out. I think the other thing was, how long have we been talking about sort of the mental fragility of this team, right?
Yeah.
That when things don't go to plan or don't go its way, it just breaks down and, it sort of throws up its hand, shrugs its shoulders and said, okay, well, that's it. There's no sort of fight back, or there wasn't any fight back. We didn't see that on on Saturday, and twice coming from a goal down. To do it like that, in a place like DC, where again, as I said, they haven't won in 9 years. They showed a lot of heart and a lot of determination and grit. So I think that's a positive sign when you just think about sort of how mentally frail this team has been in the last few seasons, especially when they go down in games. So that's really a positive. I think people I take what you say, Michael. I think I agree with a lot of what you said, but I think in the greater context, we have to remember first game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
B, this is largely an unchanged team, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, except for Corbiano and Simmer-Mancic, this is who the team was last year. I mean, I was a bit surprised that Matty Longstaff didn't start, but just because it seemed like Robin Fraser really favored him during the preseason. So I was a bit taken aback that he didn't start. So that was another change. But, given sort of just looking at it within the larger context, I think, a pretty good performance, a road performance, and to take, a valuable road point in DC on the opening game of the season, just given everything that this team has been through, with the lack of roster sort of movement in the offseason. So, I see it as positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody was asking earlier, just in terms of Matty Longstaff, I don't think he's on the outs with the manager or anything like that. I think it's just a manager's decision to go, especially with Davy Flores and Cuejo in the midfield. But if I can maybe look at it from a supporter's perspective and seeing up in the stands, look, I think a lot of what you've all said is correct, right? In terms of, yes, it looks sluggish. Those first sort of 10, 15 minutes, I think there was some real concern that this could turn into a bit of a runaway for DC United. But I think also everybody kind of recognized that TFC grew into the game a little bit more and got a little bit more control. And obviously, look, the goal, Oso's goal, a little fortuitous, though the ball from Cuejo to Henry Wingo was fantastic. I mean, there were oohs and ahs when that ball got played. And look, yes, okay, the goalkeeper misses the cross from Wingo, but he plays it kind of early. And those are the kind of things that just weren't happening last season. Those balls were not getting played. And sometimes that's what you need. You need those balls to get into the box. You need a little bit of luck. In this case, there was luck, but also, Oso made his own luck in terms of making that run into the box. And I think that's something that a lot of fans have craved from Jonathan Osorio, is to get back to those late runs into the box, to be that player. We know he can score those goals. We know he can be in those spaces and be dangerous for TFC. But in terms of that, I think that was impressive. Obviously, a lot of people in the comments right now, there's sort of two main points that people are making. One, the Wingo giveaway for the first goal. I mean,
can I get a Henry Wingo take in here? I don't know. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed or something today. I'm in Montreal. Maybe that's it. I just bring Montreal vibes to the show. Okay. Ever since he arrived, not good enough. Not good enough. He was advertised as a starter level player for Toronto FC. You come in mid-season, you battle some things, maybe some injuries. It's tough. It's not an easy adjustment, right? He came through MLS, he played in MLS, went overseas, got his feet wet overseas, come back to MLS. I haven't seen enough out of Henry Wingo to, mistake aside, it's happened a couple of times since he's been here. But for me, he lacks a lot of composure on the ball. He seems frazzled at a lot of times. And I see why Jason Hernandez went out and he likes him, right? He is aggressive. He is athletic. He, has traits that you like going forward, like we saw on his cross into the box with Ozo. Mm-hmm. I just find that play in, play out, it's not, his rhythm is not quite there. And if that's something that he can, I guess, improve upon, then sure, you have a player. I just think since Toronto FC got him to where he is now, whether that be 10, 12, 15 games, whatever the number is, I just don't think it's been anywhere close to good enough for Henry Wingo. That's my take. God, I'm I'm harsh today.
You're on one today. Oh,
I have a couple more I can go at too, but let's
JMO thoughts?
cut me off there.
I don't think that's terribly off base. Yeah, I mean, I would agree that he hasn't sort of, not that he was hyped up as, like some sort of savior of the club, but there was some sort of expectation that he was a player of a certain level, having played in Europe the last several years and having, previous MLS experience. And he hasn't reached those levels. Now, I think there's that. Now, on the other hand, there's when he first arrived in Toronto, I don't believe he was, terribly fit. And so there was injury concerns and, coming into a struggling side at the time, probably not the easiest thing as well, to really sort of acclimate yourself. And now it's the beginning of the season and it's, he's got that. So I want to see a sort of a larger stretch of games. I'd like to see him get sort of a string of opportunities where he can try to show what he's done. Until we see that, where he's playing on a consistent basis, then until then, that's when I sort of want to reserve judgment as to whether this was a good signing or not. But I don't think Michael is terribly off base in saying that it hasn't been good enough, because it hasn't. But then, that's the case for a lot of TFC players the last several years.
Yeah, I'm still, waiting to grade him yet. I don't know if we've seen him enough. I don't think he's had a stretch of games long enough to really make a formalized opinion on him yet. I see some great things out of him. I see he moves the ball really well, turnover aside, and I think he is good on the ball in those situations. The question just becomes if he can get a consistent run of games, can he kind of cut those mistakes out? He made one last year, I believe, in the game, a critical game, I think against Chicago, down the stretch. That may have, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs anyway, but cost us points in that sort of that playoff run. So look, in the end of the day, give him a couple of games, give him a run. I wonder if Monluis gives him a run for playing time as well. Now that he's here, let's see how that works out. The other sort of talking point that I'm a little surprised about, and I'd love to get both of your takes on this, because maybe I'm off base, but I thought Theo Corbeanu wasn't that bad on Saturday. Look, perfect? No, by no stretch of the imagination. But I thought he brought a little bit of sort of that dynamic sort of play that we have been kind of craving from a winger, right? That we thought we might be getting from Lorenzo Insigne, frankly. And yes, again, not perfect. Definitely not 100% on sort of pace with the team at the moment. But I feel like I'm seeing a lot of negative comments about Theo, but you guys tell me if I'm a little off base in terms of my thought about him having an all right debut for TFC.
I'm there with you, Michael. I mean, I thought it was okay. I mean, not brilliant. It wasn't sort of the best debut that you've ever seen from a TFC player. I thought he brought sort of like a sense of dynamism to sort of the attack. There were times, though, where him and Fede seemed to be out of sync and not necessarily on the same page. And there was one interesting
Carla agrees.
Sort of moment when Jonathan Osorio just sort of, I don't know if he was yelling at him from my vantage point, but it seemed like he was having a really go at him in terms of, I think it was in terms of not pressing high enough or just trying to win the ball back. So, but yeah, I mean, was he sort of a liability for the team on the day? No, far from it. But, I thought he showed glimpses of what, TFC are expecting from him this year. It would have been great is if there were more sort of set piece opportunities and they get him to take it, because we saw him score once in preseason on that, and I do think that's one of his areas of expertise is around set pieces. So it'll be really interesting to see how much of a weapon he can be in dead ball situations for Toronto.
Yeah, I agree. Okay is a good way to sum it up. Look, he looked like a player who was making his debut, knew that there was an opportunity to make a splash, knew that there was maybe some expectations put on his shoulders, and he looked like a player who was trying to do too much at times, in my opinion. I thought that I think that when that happens and you're in that sort of mindset, you don't always make the best decisions. And I thought some of his decision making, whether it would be to lay the ball off versus taking someone 1v1, I thought he was overthinking a lot of that. And I think because of that, his speed of decision making was perhaps put off by that. And I think that's okay for a debut. I think the qualities are there. You see some of the qualities that you really like, kind of like what you're alluding to there, Mike, in terms of having a winger who can, keep possession in tight areas on the touchline, can create something, a little bit of something out of nothing. I think you saw flashes of that. Final product was well off, I think, in this one, but I think it can come, and I think you're going to see a lot of things from Theo Corbeanu in the future that that Toronto FC fans will like. I just the way that Robin Fraser shaped up with having both him and Bernardeschi up top,
Right.
I liked it.
Mm.
However, they're two players who like to occupy the same space.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you saw that at times where, James, as you said, they're kind of getting they're not on the same page, or they're getting in each other's way a little bit. I think that's something they kind of got to work through, whether that be, Fede making the sacrifice and playing more down the left, because we saw that, and we actually saw something positive created out of that when Fede slipped the ball into Marcus Zibermancic, who then squared it. I believe it landed on Theo's foot and it was blocked, but regardless, it was good build up, good chance. It was one of the, I think, brighter spots of the game for TFC. So I think it's something I got to figure out, and but I do believe that the quality is there and it'll shine through.
I would also say that I think Theo will get better when you have a number 9 in that position, right? Like the false 9 was kind of out of almost necessity, really. Like Ola wasn't fit yet. I'm not sure they're fully bought in on DeAndre starting games up top. So I think you have a little bit of that sort of change in terms of, who's going to play up top. They switched several times in terms of who was going to be, taking sort of that central space. Sometimes Oso took it. Sometimes it was Theo. Sometimes it was Bernardeschi. When you have a solid number 9 in there, I think that's when you'll maybe see Theo shine a little bit more. To your point, Mike, I think you made this last week in terms of just what you think he's going to bring to the team down that left-hand flank. And I agree. Like, I just watching him play, you can see it. It wasn't all there on Saturday, but you can see, the ingredients of what could be really good.
You said man of the match performance. I think you had a couple brews in you for that one.
Yeah. Hey, look. Yes, probably. But I mean, I thought he brought something to them. Now, of course, look. The title of this show is Bernardeschi Shines in DC. We've gone 27 minutes and not really talked about the man. But look, scores the goal. Arguably could have set up. I mean, the cross to Davy Flores, I believe, who hit that header, and I was right at the goalkeeper. But a great cross. He. I mean, again, a man that was kind of everywhere throughout the game, and arguably, if you just look at the sort of the stats here, the expected goals, things like that, could have won this team the match, in his own way. But obviously, I think fans are a little bit relieved that now he's playing a little further up than necessarily playing a wing back. I think that was something that, again, in the stands, I just heard a lot of, that there's relief that he's finally in his position. And I think in a area where he can kind of just now do what he needs to do to make the team tick. But again, your thoughts on Federico's performance on Saturday?
Go ahead, Jamo.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was, outstanding. Not outstanding. I thought he was very good on the day. Sort of deployed as a wing back last year by John Herdman, and I don't think that was sort of necessarily making best of his attributes. I think, when you have players of his ability and of his attacking capabilities, I think you want to have them as close, in the final third as possible at all times. And, and to sort of strap him down with sort of defensive responsibilities like he was last year didn't seem to make all that much sense to me either. Although, credit to him, he didn't sort of complain, and I thought he handled the role quite well, and he didn't sort of complain, and he took it on. But I thought this is sort of more of the Bernardeschi that TFC needs, someone who is kind of forward thinking, always trying to sort of make plays. I thought it took a little while, but him and Richie, you could start to see a little bit of that the combination that we used to see before. You mentioned the setup of Debbie Flores, and that's early in the second half. I think he had one for Jonathan Osorio too.
Yes.
So he could have had like another assist there. It was his sort of chip pass into the box that led to Richie drawing the foul. So, he was involved. And, not just sort of waiting for the game to come to him, but trying to force his will on the proceedings. So I think this was a positive performance by Bernardeschi, and suspect it's the type of performance that, Robin Fraser is going to try and elicit out of him, more and more as the season progresses.
Yeah, I agree with that. Honestly, like, I didn't think anything really changed for Bernardeschi, like in terms of the way he played. Like, I think Bernardeschi, this is Bernardeschi. This is he's been, over the last several months I wouldn't say since he arrived, but at least over the last year, since at least Herman arrived, that you get, what your floor is with Bernardeschi, minus some red cards and some discipline issues, right? At times, like, the passion's obviously there, but I think out of Bernardeschi, you're going to get a guy who works his tail off no matter where he's playing, a guy who's willing to take risks. The difference, though, is, as you guys pointed out, was that those risks were happening higher up the pitch. He still lost the ball 27 times, which was a number probably around the same amount that he did last season, but he's losing the ball in, better areas for the team. And there's one play towards the second half where he picks up the ball in a much higher position. He's able to turn his defender and, allow TFC to A, advance, relieve so much pressure off their back line, but B, I guess, create a scoring chance off the counterattack. And I think those are things you're going to see a little bit more out of Bernardeschi. He was at his best when, in my opinion, at his best when he was playing. It was a brief period. I think it was under, I want to say, Terry Dunfield, where Terry decided to use Bernardeschi as a number 10. And it was through the middle where he actually found the most success. And it might just be because it was closer to Insigne. It might just be because it was, again, higher up the pitch. He's isolated a little bit more, and you have, I guess, more license to take risks. But I think having Bernardeschi higher up the pitch is going to lead to more goal scoring opportunities, which is what this team needs. I still think, regardless of where he plays on the pitch, what you're getting. You're going to get a strong performance out of Bernardeschi week in, week out. I think this is what fans have come to expect. So for me, it wasn't a surprise whatsoever.
No, and I mean, if you just take a look at the stats here, I'm just sort of looking at some stats here. It looked like he had 7 take-ons and had 3 successful, right? If you have him taking on guys and beating guys, and either he's going to be scoring goals or he's going to be assisting a lot more this season, which I think is just going to, with a new number 9 in, you're hoping that's going to lead to more goals scoring. That said, we do need to talk about a little bit about that defending, at least in the first half. Second half got a lot better. No shots given up. Again, this may speak more to DC United than necessarily some of the defensive prowess. But in the first half, a lot of things reared their ugly head. Obviously we talked a little bit about Wingo in the giveaway. I do think Kevin Long kind of got rolled a little too easy on that one. I get that he was trying to cover the potential layoff on that goal. But the second one, Spermancic, I mean, that was, a player making their senior debut, not closing down the cross from Jacob Morel. And then, once that ball goes up, Christian Benteke is going to eat all day. And that ended up being a little bit of a layup for them. But I guess maybe talk a little bit about, and maybe we could talk a little bit about this, in terms of what did we learn about how Robin Fraser wants, at least defensively, to set this team up. Started with a back 3. We weren't quite sure what this was going to look like under him. Obviously, we only got to see one preseason game. But did we learn a little bit of what Robin Fraser's kind of expecting defensively from this team? Or is it a little too early to kind of put a finger on anything? John, I'll start with you.
I don't know that we necessarily learned all that much. I mean, well, let me say this. I mean, I think we know how he wants his players to sort of, in terms of defensively, to defend and to approach it. I mean, he said it quite candidly during the preseason where, he talked about, I want guys to die, trying to, not giving up goals and everything. And, they have to sort of lay everything on the line. So I think he wants guys who are willing to sort of, go the physical distance, but also be smart about it, right? Obviously, who can read the game and sort of snuff out the danger before it fully develops. And I agree. I don't think Kevin Long necessarily wrapped himself in glory in that first half. I thought he was, could have done a lot better. Wingo's pass was absolutely atrocious. Don't get me wrong, but I think Kevin Long could have done much better on that. But I feel so. I think he's, he wants guys who can sort of be physical, but be smart about it, and just sort of, again, read the plays and kind of snuff danger out before it develops. And I think that's what he's going to sort of rely on. And I think that's why, Kevin Long is, you can't write him off after one game, but is an experienced defender. And I think he's really someone who Robin Fraser, I think, will continue to look to sort of quarterback, for lack of a better word, that back line, and really sort of guide the team, defensively, much in the same way that, someone like Drew Moore did in his sort of glory days, and really build sort of the back line around him and see him as the leader.
Yeah, you know what? I actually thought the back line was pretty decent, mistakes aside. Right? Two glaring mistakes. I don't know if you can call some Manchester glaring, but at least one glaring mistake. Overall they held DC to 0.74 XG. Right? They really didn't give up too much. And yeah, Christian Benteke is Golden Boot winner last year. He's the type of guy who you give him that opportunity, he's going to tuck it away. At the same time, I thought both Kevin Long and Sigurd Rosted, actually, and even Henry Wingo at times, had really good physicality, really good challenges. I thought they were up for a really, tough battle dealing with Benteke. So I'll give it up to them for that. Did we learn anything from this game? I did like the way that TFC closed down, won the ball back. I thought it showed that they are going to play with intensity when they don't have the possession. I thought, with the ball, they were quick to counter, maybe a little bit more direct than we've seen at times. But that being said, how you set up in your first game of the season away to DC United is going to be different than how you set up for your home opener against Chicago in 2-3 weeks time. So jury's still out. I want to see, and we talked about this. Robin Fraser's not a guy who falls in love with one formation, right? He's a guy who you expect to be dynamic, change. The last thing I'll mention is we kind of touched on it, but I really liked having the two players up top together. I really did like that, because for the last 3 years or so, TFC have been opting to play that 4-3-3 or some variation of that 5-2-3 under John Herman for the most part, right? You had the two wingers, you're going to use that. But, look at a guy like Prince Owusu, who makes his debut for Montreal, bags a goal, gets an assist, looks a little bit more involved with that team. That number 9 position, even go back to Jesus Jimenez. As soon as Insigne Bernardeschi kind of came in, he went invisible. But that first half of the season, when Pozuelo was there, they created a lot more. But you switch to that 4-3-3 or whatever you call it, and all of a sudden, I felt like the number 9 was way too isolated. Will that change now that they're playing two players up top, that they're playing players closer together? I think that is something they're going to, try to extract more. Let's just see what Ulo looks like when he comes in. But that's something I'm watching for.
One of the other things I know is just getting back to Michael's question about, what did we learn defensively? I thought, one of the things I noticed is just the quick transitions in terms of once they win the ball back deep in their own, like they're quick to try to work that down the wing and sort of transition from defending to attacking. And I think that's part and parcel with, what Robin Fraser and Jason Hernandez talked about, becoming more a younger and athletic team. And so that was something that I noticed that, I think we'll probably see a lot more of, is that, they don't want to dawdle on the ball. And I think a lot of it, some of it was due just to DC's pressing style, right? That they have to sort of move quickly to the side. But I think we'll probably, if I get the sense that this is kind of the way forward a little bit, is that, rather than just sort of languidly sort of work the ball upfield, they're going to try and push it with a little bit more pace and quickness. when they came.
Yeah, and I mean it suits a team that is, like you said, getting younger, getting a little bit faster. Also, let's be real, this team, playing out of the back, not the greatest when dealing with a ton of pressure, right? So if you can get that ball out of those positions quicker and get that up the pitch quicker, then you can break some presses that way, especially, again, if you're talking about the likes of Bernardeschi, Corbianu, right? You still have players like Derek Etienne Jr. on the bench. You still have a lot of pace. Tyree Spicer, once he is fit and ready to play, right? So you're starting. You can see that potentially working for TFC. Again, the question is, if you lose the ball in those positions and those guys are way up, Richie Larea playing way up, if you're going to play three at the back, can you get back? Can you defend in a transition moment? How were they going to do that traditionally in the last couple of years? They have not been great at that. So it remains to be seen how this will sort of play out over the longer stretch. Well, gentlemen, we've covered this game quite a bit. JMO, I appreciate you taking a little bit of extra time to talk about this game. Look, everybody knows where they can find you. TFC Republic, $50 well spent. In terms of just the amount of coverage that you get, and obviously now you're going to be on the road, so a lot of on the ground road reports, definitely worth everybody's time. JMO, thanks for being on the show again. Really appreciate it. Hope to have you back soon. Okay.
For sure, anytime, guys, and thanks for all the kind words. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah,
thanks,
absolutely.
JMO.
Thanks, JMO. All right. That was John Molinaro joining us for the show. Again, we always love John's opinion on things, and it's great to also just have a beat reporter back on the ground. Like it's
so nice.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about it a bit on the show, Mike, in terms of just the state currently of like media in general, but also written media when it comes to sports teams and like. Obviously, the Leafs, the Raptors, they're going to take up the bulk of that. The Jays to a certain extent too, but this team needs coverage. It's big enough to have coverage on the road, and it's great to have JMO back on the road.
Yeah, I think. Listen, I've said it in the past. JMO, Neil Davidson. We've seen Wake in the Red come in, and Brendan Dunlop, and kind of his team provide some updates for fans. I'll give a shout out to also an account I see quite often chiming in, Touchline TFC. Started doing some great work last year, and I think even this year, elevating that coverage and really filling a gap, I think that is much needed for TFC fans. So, the work that goes in for that account, for obviously in maybe a different level of JMO, Neil, and like I said, the WTR crew. Yeah, I always forget James Grossi, because James Grossi is automatic. James Grossi as well, of course. The work that goes in to connect, to build that bridge and help build that connection for fans who are, hungry for updates, for content, for interviews, for access to the team they love and care about. Listen, these guys do a tremendous job and put in a lot of work that the fans are willing to. I know, JMO in particular, like, he's talked about this, and I've spoken to him about this. I mean, this guy literally left his job with CPL to start a Toronto FC site. If it wasn't for his entrepreneurial mindset and his love for what he does, and covering Toronto FC, the local professional soccer team, here in Toronto, we'd be relying on the Canadian press, whose duty it is essentially to cover the team. And Neil does an unbelievable job. It's just, we're so lucky to have both Neil, JMO, and the WTR crew to build that connection. Anyways, I can go on and on about that.
Yeah, I know you can. But and the other thing too, I'll sort of just bring up is love and respect to away supporters. I come from the supporter background, so obviously, guys, girls, everybody who take the time to whether it's get on a plane, drive in their own cars, take a train, get on a bus to go to away games and support the club. I don't think people realize, and a lot of people have asked on this show, just to me in general, just like, what is away travel like? I've never been able to do it before. How can I get involved in going away and things like that? And thinking about like costs and things like that. Like, there's a lot of cost-effective ways that you can go on the road, and obviously, look, I just did that on the weekend, going to Washington. It's my first time to Audi Field. Great field, a great stadium, super steep away end. Holy crap, those seats were steep. But services like TFC on the road, getting you on a bus, getting you there, getting you a match ticket, and getting you home for like $200 is like unheard of, right? So the fact that you can do that is incredible. And like, the vibes on the bus are great. And also, when you get into town and you're on an away trip, like, the vibes of other TFC supporters that come to the city in the ways that they can get to that particular city is fantastic. A lot of sense of camaraderie, obviously, and then when you get into the stadium in the away end, chirping down dudes who are trying to yell 51st state at you, like, it's it's a great time, and I recommend it to anybody, and I'm always here to answer questions about away travel. But definitely, if you're thinking about an away trip, TFC on the road do a great job of a bus trip. I think they have another one scheduled for March 22nd away at Red Bull in New Jersey. So go follow them on Instagram. Hit up Santi, for a spot. It's $25, I think, for a deposit to go. So if you're thinking about it, definitely pull the trigger on it. Away days are the best days. I think Trash Panda just shouted that out. And I think it's a great opportunity, again, as JMO's going on the road, as I think more people are starting to like, hey, let's get this back to where it was, in terms of the atmosphere and taking this club seriously and trying to push it to another level, or back to the levels that we think it should be at. Those are kind of the things that sort of help do that. And again, the atmosphere in Washington was great. Even when the team went 1-0 down, like, everybody was still chanting and going and trying to push the team. And I think that is appreciated by the players. I think Jonathan Osorio posted either today or yesterday just about how much that support means to them when they're on the road.
Yeah, incredible from what I've seen. And it was so cool, Mike, for you to give fans some access and some insight into kind of what that was like. So if you're curious as a fan, check out our Twitter page at Toronto Till I Die. There's several behind the scenes footage posted by Mike Newell to give fans some insight into what that's like. My question, I guess, Mike, is how the heck did you have the energy? So it's a 8-hour for DC, 8-hour, 10-hour?
More than that, probably closer to 10. Yeah,
10-hour bus ride down to DC. Leave early morning, hit up the pub. I'm sure you guys were definitely enjoying a bevy or two on the way down.
No, of course not. We would not break U.S. interstate law.
Never.
No.
Hit up the pub and go right to the game in that weather, and you guys still managed to be heard. I feel like we heard you coming through our screens. Obviously, even when TFC, when Ozo scored, I mean, he's pointing right at you guys.
Yeah.
So it was cool to see you guys do that. And again, incredible support that I definitely have to join you guys one day on
we'll do it. We'll do TTID on the road. Either show or a little behind the scene thing, because I think that will be fun. People will enjoy that. Thank you to all the people, by the way, who came up, who were like, we listened to the show, whether it be a podcast or you watch live. Obviously, again, we always say it every week. We enjoy and love the support. I love talking about this club. It's why we do it. To give you guys obviously an outlet to talk about the team and be the sickos that you are. So we really enjoyed that. And yeah, definitely we'll do it. How did we have the energy? Honestly, I'm now on fumes. Like I'm now on fumes. I also came back and did the Raptors game last night too. So
Another
I
big one.
yeah, it was a big weekend. It was a lot. It was a big weekend. But
And you still
yeah,
got the energy to come out and do this podcast. I'm
yeah,
Mike.
of
I don't
course,
talk
man.
enough about our co-host Mike Newell. I'm giving Neil Davidson and J-Mo and WTR their
I'm
flowers.
not on
What about
those
Mikey
levels, man.
Newell,
Nobody's asking me to break news, man. I'm just a dude that yells a lot inside football stadiums and gets to talk about it for fun, which is awesome. Okay, really quickly, let's tee up next week. Orlando TFC. Reds are still on the road. They will be heading, excuse me, to Orlando, meeting up with a team that's coming off a 4-2 loss against Philly. In an odd one, I watched the highlights and I've read some reports out of both Orlando and Philly, and it seems like this was a game that Orlando lost 4-2, but didn't play that badly to lose 4-2. Did you get that sense, Mike?
Yeah, it was a strange one for sure. And look, this compared Orlando to DC, it's levels up for Toronto FC. So, heading into this one, I think, this is going to be a real measuring stick game. Biggest cliche in sports, but in reality, I mean, look, Orlando's not DC. Every, let's call them pundits or experts, whatever you want to call it, they had Orlando top 4, top 5 in the MLS Eastern Conference. This is a team that finished 4th a year ago. They made some additions. Of course, they're losing, Facu Torres, big loss, but you bring in a guy like Marco Pasalic, and a guy who's, I believe, been capped 5 times, 6 times by Croatia.
Mm-hmm.
He's a player, and
Scored a brace.
yeah, exactly, in the debut. And they've been a problem for a couple years, and I think they'll continue to be a problem in this league. TFC had a really good result a year ago in Orlando. Listen, I don't think Orlando's forgotten about that. So this is going to be a real test for the Reds. So let's see, let's see if Ula can make his debut. Let's see if we can get Nixon Gomes back into the mix. Let's see what Toronto FC look like against, dare I say, a real squad.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, I don't think you dare to say probably a real squad. I mean, this one will be interesting too. The TFC killer of the last couple of years, Duncan McGuire, will not be available for this game. He's still recovering, I think, from shoulder surgery in the off season. So that is something that I think TFC defenders can maybe take a breath and be like, "Ooh, okay, we don't have to deal with him." But obviously, Pasalic, as you mentioned, that's gonna be trouble. And yeah, look, Orlando lost quite a few players in the off season. Definitely looking to change up the squad a little bit and try to take the next step. But at the same time, this is still a dangerous squad, an Oscar Pereira squad. So they're going to be well prepared and well ready, and definitely look, they hadn't lost a home opener, I don't think, ever in their history.
Really, that's crazy. That's
so I read that. So
stat.
this is the first home opener they've ever lost. So they definitely want to get back on the winning column this Saturday in Orlando. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there, Mike. Unless you had any other last minute items you wanted to throw in there.
No, like I said, I hope Ula is fit to make his debut. I think that's the really one main guy that you circle on the TFC roster and say, he's a guy that can actually come in and make huge difference. Obviously, getting Nixon Gomes back would be huge. Zamon Luis, we saw, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, but the Arsenal defender that we came in, that we brought in, how is he in competition for a starting role? If so, what difference can he make? But yeah, that's kind of it for me. Just fingers crossed we see Ula, so TFC look a little bit different, because I think if you play that game against Orlando, I don't think you're going to come out the same way they did against DC.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another Toronto Till I Die episode, first of the 2025 regular season. Follow us on Instagram. If you're watching this on Instagram right now, we were able to get the stream up. So let us know how it was. Put it in the comments there on Instagram. How was the feed? Was it good? We're trying to get that going and make that a little bit better. Obviously, if you're watching us on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications when you know our next show's coming up. For those watching on X, thank you so much as always. And of course, if you're watching or listening to this, I should say, the next day on podcast version, 5 stars on Spotify, or hit us up with any reviews. We really do appreciate it. That really does help us, one, get better, but also, get us out there and get our name out in the community. It's growing, as we say every time. The numbers right now are fantastic in terms of those watching live. So we really do appreciate it. And we will be back next week to recap the Orlando game, tee you up for the next game, obviously, and then getting closer to that home opener, March 15th against Chicago. I'll tell you this right now. I took a little look at Chicago over the weekend. Jonathan Bamba. Keep that name in your mind, because
no, they're a team.
They're a team.
They're
a
team, man. They getting close to signing Neymar.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. Do you see that Neymar scored an Olympico for Santos over the weekend?
Oh, of course he did.
Yeah.
In Neymar style. Man, it's such a beautiful thing to have Neymar back playing football. I love the Joe Bonito, man.
Yeah, football where he actually cares about the football. All right, for Michael Singh, I'm Mike Newell. This has been Toronto Till I Die, and we'll see you next week. Cheers, everybody.
And wait, and baby, I'm TFC till I die.